Okay, you've landed the big interview and now you need to ace it. If you say one wrong thing, you're going to end up in the no pile. But what if you're not sure what those things are? Stay tuned. As a corporate recruiter, I'm going to share with you the 10 things you should never say in an interview. Hey everybody, it's Brian from A Life After Layoff, and today I'm going to talk to you about the 10 things you shouldn't say in an interview if you're serious about getting the job. As you get further into your job search, you're going to find yourself in a variety of interviewing situations, and navigating the interview process is as easy as traversing a minefield. If you say one wrong thing, you could end up blowing the whole thing up. And sure, there's a lot of reasons why people get rejected in interviews. Everything from motivational mismatches, maybe you just don't have the right type of experience. But in a lot of cases, it's actually what you say or don't say that ends up putting you in the no pile. It could be something that you think is relatively innocent that could still end up getting you rejected. If you're looking for more videos on how to get noticed by recruiters, how to get through the interviewing process, and ultimately how to land your dream job, consider hitting the subscribe button. I've got weekly videos planned. They're all from an insider's perspective, and you're not going to want to miss a video. So let's talk about some of the things that you should never say in an interview. The first one is asking what the company does. If you get to any level of the interviewing process and you still haven't figured out what the company does for a core business, you're going to come across as very unprepared. You see, prior to the interview, I expect that you're going to do base level research on what the company does, what products we offer, what are some of the divisions that we have, what are some of the competitors that are in our space, maybe some new technology that we've rolled out. You should be doing some research to show some level of interest in what the company is doing. Because if you haven't done that, you're going to have a hard time convincing me that you're truly interested in the company's missions, vision, and values. Not only that, you should also be looking for what the core value statement is to see if it aligns with what your core values are. Because if you end up being a cultural mismatch, you're going to be miserable and it's usually going to lead to a turnover. And so if you show up to the interview asking me what the company even does, you're going to have a long uphill battle for the rest of the interview. The second thing you should never ask is what the role is. Now, I expect to fill you in on some level of detail about what the position entails, but I do expect you to have read the job description very thoroughly and have a good understanding of what we're trying to accomplish with the position. So when you ask me what the position is or does, it shows that you've done very little homework prior to the interview. And in almost every case, that's not going to be a good first impression. Companies want problem solvers. They don't want somebody that needs to have their hand held. And if you haven't done any research on the company and you need us to explain everything for you, think about the message that that's sending. The next thing never to ask in an interview is, what are the hours? Okay, an hourly person is going to get a pass on this one, but if you're a salaried non-exempt employee and you're interviewing for a professional level position, never ask about the hours. Even if you have valid concern, maybe a previous employer you were worked to the bone and had to work long, hard hours over weekends and holidays, but I would suggest keeping this one to yourself because a company is going to believe that you're a clock watcher, which is precisely what you don't want us to think as we're interviewing you. If you have a concern about the work conditions or hours, figure out another way to ask the question without sounding like you're somebody who avoids work. Perhaps ask about the culture or the expectations in the first 90 days or potentially what shift you're going to support. But don't ask, how many hours are you expecting me to work? Because it's not a good look on you. Another thing to be very careful about is asking about promotional opportunities. Now, it's very reasonable to expect to have a potential career path, but if you walk in the door asking about when you're going to get the boss's job, it's going to look like you're not that interested in the position you're interviewing for. Instead, ask about career paths and potential growth opportunities long term. But you want to make sure that you come across as being very excited about the position at hand and looking to learn as much as you can about the corporation. So be careful how you ask the question and make sure that you frame it in a way that shows genuine excitement for the position that you're interviewing for. The next thing to avoid is asking about salary. Listen, we know that you want to get paid and get paid a fair wage. We also don't want to waste your time any more than you want to waste ours. But asking that question right out of the gate is a big turnoff for employers because you don't even know what the position entails yet you're already asking about what you'll be paid. Now, some are going to argue that that should be a major consideration early in the process and we don't want to waste each other's time, but don't worry, I'm going to cover that later in my interview with you. But let me as the recruiter bring up the question and not you, because I don't want to question your motivation for talking to me. Also, if you've gotten past me in the interviewing process and you're on to the second round, we've already covered this topic. Don't go asking the hiring manager about the pay ranges either. That's an even bigger turnoff. Because in almost every case, the HR department, the TA team, and the hiring manager all come together to decide on a fair offer for you, and the hiring manager rarely has final say. And since my hiring managers already know that I asked that question, they're just going to think that you're fishing for a better answer. So let me be the one to address it with you. Which leads us to the next one. not answering my salary expectation question. Now, in reverse of the previous bullet point, I'm going to ask you the question of tell me about your salary expectations. If you don't know how to answer that question, or you say something to the effect of, well, gosh, I don't know what the local market pays for this type of job, I'd have to get back to you on that after I think about it for a little bit, it's going to show that you're completely unprepared for the interview. You should already know the number in your mind that you need to see. And if you avoid answering the question altogether and you try to push it forward in the process, you're not going to pass my interview and you're not going to get sent on for the next round. So you need to answer the question. Now, if you're unsure about how to answer that question in the best way, I actually made a video about that recently and I'll leave a link below. Make sure you check it out. It'll help prepare you for the dreaded salary question. The next thing never to discuss in an interview is talking poorly about your previous company or your previous boss. I know it can be tempting to throw your crappy boss under the bus or talk about how big of a mess your former company was. But here's some truth. We don't care. We're only looking to determine if you're a good fit for our company and our role, not to be a sounding board. Talking bad about your previous experiences just isn't a good look. So try to be gracious, apply learning to what you did, and show genuine interest in our opportunity. The next thing to avoid saying is how nervous you are. Now, I get it. Interviewing is one of the most nerve-wracking things that you can do, so there is a degree of nerves that are expected. Being a bit nervous is understandable. Especially in a job search where you're unemployed, it can be very stressful, so we get it. And I'll usually give you a little bit of wiggle room. If I sense that you're overly nervous, I might throw you a couple softball questions just to break the ice, just to get you out of your nervousness. But at some point, I expect you to take ownership of the interview and really show confidence in what you've done. So being overly nervous can actually start to hurt you. And if you get to the hiring manager level of interviewing, they're probably going to have a little bit less of an appetite for dealing with nervousness. So my best advice there is to make sure that you're well prepared and you know exactly how to sell yourself in an interview. The next thing to avoid is being too casual. Listen, it's fine to be a little bit loose during an interview, and in fact, it can help break the ice. But being too casual can potentially offend, especially if you're using colorful language. You're not at a bar, so don't talk to the interview like they're your buddy in a social setting. The same thing goes for being too casual. Err on the side of caution when using first names. I would generally default to whatever they introduce themselves to you as. But never use terms like boss or bro in an interview setting. Because if you say things like sure thing boss, no problem boss, it's actually considered derogatory and they'll look at it unfavorably. Keeping things polished and professional is the best way to make a favorable impression on the interview team. The last thing I want to cover is not asking questions. So this one is about what you don't say rather than what you do say in an interviewing setting. When we get to the end of the interview, I'm going to ask you if you have any questions for me. And I'm going to expect that you're going to have a list of well thought out, intelligent questions on the company culture and how you might fit into the organization. Not asking any questions shows a lack of interest or potentially a lack of awareness on whether or not you'd even be a good fit for our organization. So come prepared with a list of questions and show that you're engaged in our process. So there you have it. There's 10 things to avoid saying in an interviewing setting if you're serious about the job. If you're going through the interview process, it helps to stay ahead of the curve by being prepared for whatever they throw at you. If you feel like you're lacking skills in the job search arena, that's actually what I specialize in. We've got a website called lifeafterlayoff.com. It's loaded with tips and tricks on how to get through the interview process and all the way to the offer, and it's all from an insider's perspective. Additionally, I have a course called the Ultimate Layoff Bootcamp. It's 7 hours of dedicated training. It takes you through each step of the hiring process. If you think that might be of value for you, consider checking it out. Thanks for joining me on this video. Happy job hunting, and we'll see you on the next one.